Are you missing out on these habits of mentally strong people? I think you're going to want to listen into this one. So, mentally strong people. I think first of all it's very important to get clear in our heads what exactly a mentally strong person looks like to us. Now, what I portray as a mentally strong person might well be very different from what you would portray as someone who is mentally strong. Regardless, it doesn't really matter what I categorise or what you categorise as someone who is mentally strong individually. All that really matters is that at some point before you begin the process of trying to look at yourself and reshape yourself, you begin with an idea that is important to you of what is mentally strong. Now, to help this get going, I'm going to very quickly categorise what I feel makes someone mentally strong. Now, to begin with, I think it's important to say that to be mentally strong does not always mean we are immovable, impenetrable, unable to show any degree of movement in our emotions, in ourselves, and in our general well-being. That is not what we are categorising here, in my opinion. Now, for you, that may very well be different, and that's something that you're going to have to look at and work on yourself. However, in the first instance, my categorisation here is that this person does not need to be immovable. A mentally strong person can, for the most part, be strong, firm, like a mountain holding against the winds and the rain that drive against it. And that's absolutely fine. However, a mentally strong person, for me, is also someone that's able to look at themselves and to state, I am not, in this moment, as mentally strong as I would like to be. My resolve is not in the position I would like, and it's okay. It is okay to not be at this moment exactly where I would like to be. That doesn't mean that in the future I won't be there again, but for just now, I'm not there. So, my mentally strong person is someone who is essentially able to be, for the most part, resilient. But also at the same time, my mentally strong person has a special attribute there, which allows them to look and say, just now, I'm not feeling very mentally strong, and that is okay. And that is something that we're going to come back to later on, so keep watching. However, for now, that's my definition, and why don't you take a moment to pause this video and write out a little list for yourselves of what your mentally strong person looks like. So, welcome back. I hope you've taken a moment to go and write out what your mentally strong person looks like to you. If you've not, hit the pause and go and do that just now. And whilst you're down there at those buttons, why don't you follow, subscribe, and also maybe send this on to a friend if you think it's important, as nothing is more important to me than helping spread the message about mental health and mental health awareness out there in the real world. I have been very good, and I've gone and done some of my homework and written down what a mentally strong person looks like to me. And I've also cheated because I know what's coming up in this video, and I have gone ahead and also written down some of the qualities that I'm now going to discuss with you in the rest of this video. So, number one, what is a mentally strong person? Well, I have already covered that. I've covered that off. I've said to you what my mentally strong person looks like. And what I've then done, and what I would highly suggest you do, don't need to pause again, you can if you want, just go through your list right now, and from this image of your mentally strong person, I want you to basically just keep going down, writing out very simple bullet points of what kind of characteristics this person has that they are portraying externally. Now, you might ask, because I've done this twice now, why am I talking about external portrayals? The reason for this is essentially we all internally have largely very similar drives and emotions and feelings and doubts and challenges that we need to overcome throughout the course of our lives. And that's very normal. We are not looking for our internal state necessarily to always portray externally that we are the most strong, the most resilient, the most stoic individuals in this world. Internally. Because ultimately that's not realistic. There are times for all of us where no matter how normally level and calm we can maintain ourselves, there will be something that will challenge us and move us in a way that we do not expect. So, I'm talking about external qualities, and the reason I'm talking about external qualities is essentially our behaviours, our sort of human psychology and our behaviours that we display externally are not actually who we are necessarily. What they are is they are what we are internally that is then expressed. I suppose the best way to think about this, I'm filming a video right now. I'm sure many people are old enough to remember when we had VHS camcorders and when we had digital camcorders, and even the youngest amongst us will know about the joy of the mobile phone, which is able to record anything we want on the go. And so what we are doing when we are taking these films is we are capturing a moment, a slice of time, which is absolutely something that's been expressed externally. And the reason for this is it's something that you are able to view. The lens is able to view. If you have a picture of something, it captures a single moment. If you have a video, it captures a series of pictures, a series of single moments. And for anyone who's interested in any of the Zen concepts behind these individual single moments, I have other videos available, which you can go and watch, which will link into this and help to build a bigger picture of what I'm doing here. But essentially, what we're doing when we're expressing things externally ourselves, you need to imagine that you are not yourself looking at these things that are going on. You are the external viewer who's looking into yourself and going, what was I portraying at any particular time? And if it's not what I wanted to portray, we need to then dig a little bit deeper and go, why was I not portraying that? Why was I not able to? And then we need to go and work on that in the background. So, without further ado, I'm going to get back to the list and about our mentally strong person. So, number one, most important quality, which I've got written down here, is a mentally strong person is confident. Externally, a mentally strong person is going to portray confidence. Now, confidence very much could be entirely a video in itself, how to be confident, what confidence is, how we are able to become more confident, all of these type of things. So without going into too much depth, let's talk about confidence, why this is a habit of the mentally strong, and what we can do in small doses to instill confidence without going way off the deep end here. So, confidence is essentially, in and of itself, the ability to do something with a level of self-assured drive or purpose behind you that says, this is something I am capable of doing. Now, these confidences that you have about doing certain things, it's over. I would say it's overdone, really. People talking about how to become confident as an overarching personality trait. No one is all-encompassingly confident, and if they are, it's actually more likely some form of psychological condition such as narcissism, where they essentially are overly confident to the point of it becoming detrimental to their character. Because we have different confidences for all kinds of different things. So, to make this very simple and to give you my thoughts on this, we have infinite confidences. Okay? So you have, from the moment you were born, been developing confidences. If you were a baby, right now, if you roll yourself mentally back to being a very, very newborn infant, you are not going to be doing very much. You're going to be lying down, you're going to be trying to roll about, you're going to be trying to flap your hands, you're most likely going to be sleeping. And slowly but surely, you learn that you can look at your hands and at your fingers, and you can do various different things with those hands and fingers. And you get that you can do more and more things with your hands and fingers. You can turn them, you can move them, you can do all sorts of stuff. And then eventually you'll start to wiggle your legs in there, and I'm not going to wiggle my legs there for this video, but you will eventually get to the point where you start to do that, and then you learn how to roll over from your back onto your front, and then you learn how to swing your arms and your shoulders, and you learn to crawl, and you learn to walk, and you learn to run, you learn how to walk upstairs, you learn how to go downstairs. You most likely learn at some point that if you're not careful, you will fall down those stairs. But by the time you're maybe, say, 3, 4, 5 years old, you will have learned that you can walk. It's something that's within your ability to do. And you can do that without falling over very often, if ever. You can also do the same when you're running. You can run and not fall over. And then when you get to be maybe sort of somewhere between the ages of 17 and 21 for most parts of the world, you'll be sat down in a vehicle of some sort, and you will be learning to drive, and you will become confident that you can drive that vehicle without crashing into anyone else. And when you start that process, you have zero experience, and when you get to the end of that process, you will become confident. You will have learned how to do that, and you will be confident in your ability to do it. So, what am I saying here? What I'm saying is very simply, there are 1,000 examples of ways and times when you can be confident that don't all necessarily link in with each other very nicely. So, as I sit here just now, I am confident in my ability to stand up out of this chair and walk around. I am confident in my ability of walking down the stairs and walking back up the stairs. I am confident in my ability to drive a car. Now, whether or not we should always trust our confidence is a different question. I might go outside, first of all, I might fall down the stairs trying to get outside because I'm overly confident and miss a step. I might go and sit in my car and try to reverse out of my driveway and hit into a wall or another vehicle, and yet I could have been totally confident. And so confidence, I think, is important, and this will come on a second point that's coming up later as well. Confidence can be misplaced, but ultimately as a foundational point, you need to be confident. And so things I'm describing here are what I like to think of as confidence of action. So walking, running, sleeping, cycling, flying, driving, swimming, climbing trees. These are all confidences of action, actions that your body will perform. And most people are so confident in these things, typically, that they don't think about it. And they don't think, oh, I'm such a confident walker. Because it would be seen to be ridiculous, because quite frankly, 90% of the human population on the earth are confident walkers. You will have the very young who are so young they don't understand what confidence is and can't walk yet. And you will have the elderly who are at a stage in their life where they are no longer stable on their feet, and so they'll have lost that confidence in their ability to do that. They may well use aids to help them walk about, and that's symbolic of their lack of confidence in their ability to walk. What isn't necessarily obvious initially, people, is that they already have these confidences. They are confident in 1,000 things. When people think of confidence, they think of the second type of confidence, which is confidence of character, which is essentially confidence in who we are as human beings, confidence also in our place, our social place within groups and people around about us, and also confidence, and I think this is most important because confidence and all the things we talk about are essentially future predictions. So there's things that happen in the past, things that are happening right now, and things that will happen, and no one ever thinks, I'm confident in the past, I would have ate breakfast this morning, in the same way they wouldn't think they're confident about walking or running, because it's just obvious, I had breakfast this morning, and so therefore I can be very confident. So confident, in fact, I don't think about it. Confidence in what I'm doing right now, this is an area where I can be unconfident. But in order to be confident right now, it actually depends on a time in the past where I was future predicting where I would need to be confident. And so the habit of confidence and forming confidence, and the ultimate thing that you need to remember, if you remember nothing else about this sort of description and understanding of confidence I've given, is this: confidence in the future, confidence in your ability to succeed, confidence in your ability to be sort of leading within a group, or even just cohesively forming within a group and being friends with people in a group, and ability to talk on stage or in front of camera. All of these types of confidence are not dependent on right now, and they're not dependent on the past. What they are dependent on is the past right now one day becoming the future. And so right now we all have a unique ability and superpower, which is we can take a very, very small micro action which one day will become who we are in the future. And so how am I going to take all of this stuff about confidence and then really become super duper confident in the future? Well, I'm going to give you the secret, and you're not going to like the secret whatsoever. Right now I'm talking in front of this camera. I am not going to lie. The first time I ever sat down to record anything on a camera like this, I was petrified. I couldn't do it. The first 8, 9, 10 takes I did were awful. Awful. And you might be sitting there thinking, well, this is awful now, and you know what? It might be. But I'm confident enough to do it, and I don't care. And so in order to get to this place, how did I do it? Well, I've just told you. I did 8, 9, 10 takes that were rubbish. And I then did one take that was not quite so rubbish. And then I uploaded it to the internet. And people saw it. And I went, that was not the worst thing in the universe. I prefer this to, certain death or low, slow, lingering starvation. It was okay. I'll do it again. And I did it again. And I did it again. And I did it again. And so confidence in our character and our abilities and our place within societies and all of the things that people can feel unconfident about essentially can be changed by small repetition, action, and more often than not, just the tiniest little pinch of challenge in where we are in our abilities to be right on the line of what I'm confident doing, if not one step over it today, is something that means that tomorrow when I come back to do this, that one step over the line is now where my confidence mark is. And I just need to go one step over it again tomorrow. And once I've done that, and over time, over the period of weeks and months and years, I will eventually get to a point where I have moved my line from right down here all the way up here. And while this might look on the screen at the moment as if this is the very, very top limit of where confidence is, if I was to pan that camera back the way you would see, there's at least another 2 or 3 feet of room above where that line was. There's more above the line, and essentially what that means is there's a ceiling you can see, and then above that there's even more room for you to grow into. It just takes looking at what confidence means to you, what you need to do to get there, and take one step over the line of where you are today, repeatedly, continually. And I would highly suggest you also don't just take my word for it, and you go and watch other videos about people who have developed confidence when they were perhaps unconfident, and what they will have all universally said is essentially the problem they had initially with confidence was not that they were fundamentally unconfident people and could never become confident. The problem was when they started, they had doubt in their ability to do something. And by slowly and repeatedly doing it over and over again, in the same way that when you were a child, you were between the ages of 2 and 4, you first started to crawl up onto tables and pull yourself up and take stumbling falls, you eventually became confident in your ability to put one foot in front of the other in a way that you then became so confident you didn't even think about being confident in that way. Confidence is number one and the most important habit of mentally strong people. So, what's next on my list? Well, number 2 on my list of habits of mentally strong people is that they are able to delay gratification. So, why would we need to delay gratification? Why would this be something that's important? And number one most important question I think you should be asking about this is essentially, what does this have to do with being mentally strong? Well, in order to explain that, I want you to very, very quickly think of a wave in your mind. Get a picture clear in your head of a wave riding up and down and up and down, and it doesn't need to be the most beautiful wave of all time, but just imagine it in your head right now. Big wave going across the screen. And what you need to think on this wave as it's going along is that wave represents currently your emotional state. Now, that's an unquantifiable thing because that can encompass all kinds of things. But to put it very simply, you can imagine that wave line is showing you as being happy and unhappy, top and bottom. And so you go along, and let's imagine it starts somewhere in the middle. So you're not unhappy and you're not happy, you're just alive. And you're somewhere in the middle. It's a Tuesday, it's not raining, it's a bit grey, but you're somewhere doing something and it's okay. And as this wave comes along, it rises up. There's an event happens somewhere, you bump into an old friend, you get a free coffee when you go out for your morning break, you find an old jacket that's got a significant amount of money in it, and you go and get yourself a treat of some sort. And so you become happy, and so this wave rises up and you reach the top of the crest. And then once you've done that, obviously that's a short-lived thing. No one right now sitting here today is thinking, 10 years ago I found money in a jacket pocket and I've just never come down off of that. Well, you know, if you're the kind of person who is still riding off of that from 10 years ago, please do not let me get in the way of that. Enjoy your financial recompense. But essentially, the wave for most people will go up to the height of, you know, I found money in an old jacket pocket and I went and bought myself a book, or I got an ice cream, or I went for an afternoon out at my favourite place where I was able to buy access to the service, or, you know, watch a movie or whatever I did there. And it will start to come back down. And it will come back down to the centre line. What we know more than likely is actually what will happen is you will overcorrect and come down. But we'll leave that to one side. So essentially, that there's a thing in psychology that's based on the dopamine effect. You can go and look at this if you want, where essentially because you've been happy and you come back down. You don't come back to the centre and just ride along like a blip that goes like this and then centering along. It overcorrects, and so you come up and you're happy, and then because it's coming back down, your brain goes, huh, I was happy, now it's coming down, I must be sad, and so it comes back below the line. Not for today's video, but essentially just we'll leave that to one side. You can go and look at it if you want in your own time. So, similar scenario, we've had an up wave, we go along, our day's been okay. We're just going to pretend we stayed in the middle there. And then we have an event happen to us. Again, this is an external event, this is not something happening internally to us. Our emotions don't ride based on things internal to us, typically. They can do if we are experiencing, negative memories of events that have happened and lots of other things. Again, this is a generic look at it. If you are genuinely experiencing sadness a lot because of things that are internal, I would suggest you go and speak to someone, and you go and speak to someone right now. Put this video down, turn it off, and go and speak to someone, because that's what's going to help you most quickly start the process of making that better. It doesn't need to be professional. It would be good if it was a professional. Go and speak to a friend. Go and speak to a family member, and do it right now. I don't want you to hear another word out of my mouth. But back to our line. We've got a negative event. I have been walking along on the side of a road, and I have stepped in a puddle. A very deep puddle, and my shoe is now incredibly wet. And so I have dipped down the line, I've become sad, and then I go home, I change my socks and my shoes. It goes back to just being, normal dry sock and shoe situation, so I come back up to the middle line. And so that's the basics of the emotions there. It's a wave that's going along, and you're either going up or you're going down. Now, what we have learned, and by we I mean human beings based on psychological research, is that very simple model there of emotions, largely for 99% of life on planet Earth that is animal and not plant, although there's some debate about plant, again, not for this video, but for 99% of animal life on Earth, that very, very simple stimulus response model explains psychologically emotion and what happens. If you are a deer and you're running along or an antelope or whatever, and you're running on the African savannah, and you find a water hole and you're very thirsty and you start to drink the water, you're going to go up happy, and then when you're not thirsty anymore, you're going to walk away and you're going to go back to the middle. And if you're the same deer and you're running along and you're at the water hole, and suddenly a lion comes and jumps out of a bush, out of the savannah grass at you, you are going to have a negative experience that's going to go like that. What we have as human beings, and there are quite a significant number of other animals that have levels of intellect and intelligence that are able to deal with this as well, but humans are like the superheroes of the mental cognition world. Our brains, mine maybe not so much, but most humans have fairly large brains. If you look at my head here, and you imagine from right down where the neck meets the spinal column here, all the way around the back of my head, and all the way to the tip of my forehead there, all of that you see is brain. And then there's space around the eyes, and it'll come in and round here somewhere. But essentially all of this bit that you see is brain. There is very little gap between the brain and the skull, and what there is gap is filled by fluid, basically, and it's very, very thin levels of fluid that keeps the brain suspended in the skull. And what this big brain has allowed us to do is essentially to plan and play out scenarios and situations longer term that allow us to escape this basic wave. So if you are the deer or the antelope, you will experience the happy or sad event, the stimulus, and you will then have your response. What we as human beings are able to do is we are able to take a stimulus and have a response in the same way as everyone else can, but we are also able to have a stimulus and take moments to decide and plan whether or not we are going to act on our stimulus, but we are also able to abstractly also think about stimuluses that might happen as well. And the psychological thing that I'm referring to in terms of our abilities to delay gratification, so to come back to the point of what our character is able to do, essentially the stimulus that will arrive is going to be, let's say in the psychological experiment, it was a sweetie. So let's go with the sweeties. Well, there's also an advert that did a very similar thing by a well-known company. If you live in the UK, you might have seen this. And basically, young children were presented with a plate which had a desirable treat on it, a sweetie, a cookie, a candy bar, a chocolate bar, and they were then left alone with it in a room for a period of time, and they were told that if they didn't eat what was in front of them, they would get double or something similar, a greater amount of whatever was there. They just needed to wait. And this essentially allowed this child, to make a decision about whether or not they were going to take the gratification of whatever this yummy treat was now. So come along, stimulus, yummy treat in front of me, eat, happy, down. Or whether they were mentally able to cognitively understand the benefit of waiting for 2 minutes or 3 minutes to get double that amount. Because if we think about a wave, if it comes along and it goes up when we get 1 unit of nice sweet, if we get 2 units of nice sweet, it'll come along and instead of going up to 1 unit, it'll come up to 2. And so therefore we will get a bigger, happier response. And that only requires us to wait for 2 minutes or 5 minutes or however long we're told we have to wait for it. And so mentally strong people take what is essentially quite a simple example there, which everyone can understand, and we are able, or they, should I say, are able to apply this to longer term situations. Prime example, which I think most people will understand, hopefully, is think about your pension pot, right? Or if you're a young person who doesn't have a pension yet, think about a pension pot and retiring when you no longer have to go out to work. That is essentially the ultimate example of delaying gratification, and it can be sort of used to portray situations, all kinds of situations, which essentially will allow you to apply this thinking laterally to other things that are going on. So, your pension pot, the very first day that you start paying into your pension, when you start work for the first time, and we'll make this nice and simple and we'll not include life's muddiness yet, but let's imagine you start your first job the day after you left school. You have lived at home with your parents all the way through school. The day after you leave school, you begin to work. And that day also happens to be the day you leave home. And so you now have to go and rent, or you have to go and get a mortgage, or various other things. Again, we'll keep this simple without debates about modern living styles. But basically, you have gone from a situation of financial zero. You make no money, you spend no money. And then on this one day, you now suddenly make money, but you also spend money. And so why am I putting this situation in this way to you? Well, essentially, in this scenario, on your very first day you start work, you have an option. You have an option to begin a savings pot for your retirement. And if you choose on day one to begin to do that, at the end of the month, when you get your pay from the company, it will be slightly less than what it might have been because you have taken some of that money and chosen to save it in a pot for a time which is maybe 40, 45 years ahead of you, 50 years ahead of you, 55 if you really want to live and work for a long time without taking a break. And so essentially, whatever amount of money I could have had today, I'm not going to see again for, let's call it 50 years just to make it a nice round number. But that money today, let's say I decide to put, I don't know, £100 or $100 or 100, whatever currency you use, into a little pot to save for when I'm old and retired. That money today might be a significant portion of what you earn. You've just started working, you're likely not going to be on the biggest salary you'll ever earn in your life. And detrimentally, it might be meaning that you are having to make very difficult decisions about, how much food you can afford to buy, what kind of house you can afford to live in, how close you can afford to live to your work based on where your house is. But come the day you retire in 50 years' time, if we now fast forward 50 years' time, that 100, whatever currency you're using, might have increased 100 times. And so that £100 or dollars might have become £100,000 or $100,000. And in 50 years' time, when you get that £100,000 or dollars back out, you suddenly might be going, wow, that's a humongous amount of money. I can buy quite a lot with that money now. And at that point, you're not going to be thinking back to the, takeaway pizza that you could have bought that month with that £100. You're going to be sitting there feeling very content with yourself, thinking, I can actually buy a whole car with this. I can buy a holiday for me and my children and my grandchildren with this money. That's a significant portion of money I can do big good with, rather than the little good I could have had a long time ago. And so this is essentially the process of delayed gratification. It's the ability to be poised and delaying being happy now. Now, this doesn't mean we need to be unhappy now, but it does mean that always choosing the option of happiness now might not be necessarily what we really want to do. And so it's important when we are building our mentally strong person within ourselves, we are thinking about what is going to lead to the greatest amount of happiness in a point in the future that we can reasonably put up with doing something that might be quite difficult for us. And so this is now leaving us with a little bit of a conundrum, and it comes on to our third, or my third, should I say, trait of mentally strong people, which is, in order to do something which is going to be right for you across the whole of your lifespan, is going to require quite a lot of time just now where you're doing something that is not right for you, and not right in a way that's bad or seriously detrimental to you. Not I'm going to smoke 20 cigarettes a day because it's the only way I can keep working 100 hours a week and keep myself awake, right? That's bad at all times, and we need to be reviewing ourselves and reviewing our commitments and obligations of things we have to do, reviewing our health habits, our physical hygiene, if you will, of what is keeping our body running well, and deciding whether or not that's something that's worth it. So delaying gratification is not necessarily saying I'm not going to eat any food 4 days, Monday to Thursday, and I'll eat all of my entire food allowance on Friday because I'll be really happy on Friday to eat a week's worth of food, right? Think about that for a second. If you ate everything you'd normally eat over a week in one day, you are going to be sick. And for the rest of that week, you are probably going to be laid up in bed very ill as well because you've not eaten. And so, delaying gratification by a certain amount is certainly beneficial. The £100 or the $100 out of your paycheck today, by the time you get your pay in, you probably won't even notice it's been taken out because you'll just get used to it not being there. Now again, if that's meaning that you can't eat, and none of this is financial advice, but if 100 is too much for you is what I'm saying, maybe 50 or maybe 40 or maybe even £5 or $5 into a pension, if that's all you can do without seriously detrimentally harming yourself, fine. But there's a certain element of you need to be able to delay gratification. Going out, late at night to a party, if you're a teenager or a young adult, or if you've been a young adult either in the recent past or perhaps in the distant past, you will remember going out very late to a party on a Friday night or a Thursday night or a Saturday night and having to get up early for your job the next morning and feeling very not well and very tired. And that's because you chose to take the gratification of going to the party or the event now, even though you know the next morning you have to get up early for work. And so by delaying your gratification, not going out this week, because next weekend you have a day off and so you can stay out all night and not need to get up, that's the right thing to do. But it's creating this, as I say, all of this delaying gratification is creating a problem, which is it serves and has the fundamental potential that it might emotionally drive us onto the wrong or the bad half of the wave. If we are missing out on going to a party, if we are having to make difficult financial choices about, how much we can spend on our food or our house, how far away we need to live from our work, and therefore how early we need to get up in the morning to get ready and leave, that means that we are having to tolerate and deal with a certain level of unpleasantness. And so this leads us on to our final point and characteristic of what I think makes a confident and strong and, gratification delaying, mentally strong person. And that third and final point is the ability to maintain emotional balance. And this one I'm going to try and do quite quickly because I think it's something that, it's possible to have a very deep and philosophical debate about this, but I don't think it necessarily needs to. It's something that people will go away and learn and experience, hopefully themselves, from having done some of the steps that I've suggested here. And in order to maintain emotional balance, what you need to do is basically go back to the wave and you need to reimagine the line. And this is where, if you're someone who has regular practices in order to improve your resilience, your coping skills, your mental well-being, maybe has a mindfulness practice or meditative practice, this will not be new to you, but to some of you this will probably be quite new. You need to essentially look at the wave, comes along, gets happy, goes back, gets sad, sad again, gets happy. And what you need to do is imagine that rather than riding this wave with the emotion, you perhaps need to watch the wave going along and see that underneath all of it there is a line running through the centre. And once you've done that, it's possible for you to look at that line in the centre and for you to follow mentally that line whilst your emotions go up and potentially down. And once you have realised this and realised that there is a potential for you to mentally, cognitively understand that your mind follows the centre line whilst your body and your emotions are going all over the place, that perhaps you do not need to experience extremes of happy and sad, of gratification and despair, and all the rest of it. You can follow the centre line through it all. Or, even if you don't want to follow it through it all, you can follow through the centre line when you would like to do so. And this is essentially what I would suggest all of you do when you are doing meditative practice, doing mindful practices, when you are doing your journaling, when you are doing any of these things, is you're going to try and remember that essentially you want to find this centre line, because that's what's going to allow you to delay your gratification and achieve better outcomes in the future. And also, actually, that is going to be what allows you to become confident. Because if you don't follow the extreme happiness and extreme sadness, and you bowl along kind of somewhere in the middle, it means when you need to do something that requires you to be confident or requires you to be outside of your comfort zone, if you don't experience the deep drop at the bottom of sadness, fear, anxiety as deeply as you might have done, and you do this over and over again, repeatedly in different situations, the confidence building steps I gave you, what you're going to realise and what you're going to come to is essentially a point where externally, because you're not following the highs and lows of the emotion, you are going to be confident. And because you are not following the highs and lows, you are not repeatedly suffering the highs and lows, and therefore you are able better to delay your gratification, and also therefore to choose what gratification you are prepared as a human being to delay. So that is all I have for you today. I do hope you've enjoyed this, and I do hope that you found this informative. If you can, please subscribe, like, and also send this on to someone who you know could benefit from this. And I will see you in the next video.